In the heart of an ancient city, where narrow alleys snake between old wooden houses, lived a small kitten named Bondok. He wasn't big and tough like the stray cats of the streets, with their battle scars and fierce stares. No, Bondok was a quiet house cat with fur the color of soft apricots and wide green eyes that always seemed to reflect caution and shyness. He was the kind of cat who would tremble at the distant rumble of thunder and dive for cover under the sofa if a spoon clattered to the floor. The wise old cat of the house, Susu, would often watch him with knowing eyes. "My dear boy," she'd purr, "courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about facing your fear when you have no other choice." Bondok never truly understood what she meant. He just knew fear was his constant companion. He didn't understand, that is, until that one fateful, stormy night. That night, the storm wasn't the only danger. A faulty wire on the ground floor sparked, and in an instant, a fire began to crawl up the walls. Thick, black smoke billowed through the house, a suffocating cloud that sent everyone into a panic. The family, in their desperate rush to escape the flames, scrambled out into the cold night air. Amidst the chaos and confusion, a terrible mistake was made. They didn't realize that little Layla was still fast asleep in her upstairs bedroom, and with her was old Susu, whose aging legs could no longer carry her quickly to safety. Bondok had managed to escape with the others. He stood shivering in the garden, the cold rain mixing with the hot ash falling from the sky. Then, through the roar of the fire, he heard it. A faint, muffled meow, almost lost in the noise. It was Suzu's voice. It was followed by another sound, a small, choked cough. It was Layla. In that single, heart-stopping moment, something inside Bondok shifted. He looked at the raging fire, the swirling smoke, the glowing embers. But he no longer saw it as a terrifying monster. He saw it for what it was, an enemy threatening his family. All the fear that had defined his life was still there. His heart was pounding. His body was trembling. But another feeling rose up, stronger and fiercer than any fear he had ever known. Love. He took a deep breath, filling his small lungs with the smoky air, and instead of running further away, he turned. Like a flash of apricot lightning, he dashed back into the burning house. The world inside was a nightmare of heat and chaos. The furniture he once hid under was now a landscape of fire, but Bondok didn't hesitate. He leapt over burning chairs and smoldering rugs, his instincts screaming at him to flee, but his heart pushing him forward. The heat stung his paws, but he barely noticed. He remembered what the older cats had always said, "In smoke, the good air is low." He dropped his body close to the floorboards, crawling beneath the thickest, darkest clouds where a thin layer of oxygen still lingered. He moved with a purpose he had never felt before, his green eyes fixed on the path ahead, navigating the fiery maze by memory. His goal was Layla's room. He had to get there. He had to. Finally, he burst into the upstairs bedroom. The scene was devastating. Layla lay still on her bed, unconscious from the smoke. Beside her, old Susu was desperately, weakly, trying to pull the heavy blanket off the little girl, her own strength failing. Time was running out. Bondok knew he was too small to fight the fire or carry anyone to safety. But he had to do something. He opened his mouth and let out a sound no one had ever heard from him before. It wasn't his usual quiet meow. It was a sharp, piercing shriek that cut through the roar of the flames, a cry filled with desperation and courage. He leapt onto Layla's bed and began scratching at her hand, not to hurt her, but just enough to try and wake her from the smoke-induced sleep. When she didn't stir, a new idea sparked in his mind. He scrambled over to the bedroom window, which faced the street. He stood on his hind legs, pawing frantically at the glass, banging against it, and crying out again and again. He was making as much noise as his little body could possibly create, a beacon of sound in a sea of smoke. Outside, in the confusion, a firefighter's gaze was drawn upward by the strange, frantic movement in the smoke-filled window. He saw the small silhouette of a cat pawing desperately at the glass. He knew instantly someone was trapped inside. "Up there!" he shouted. "There's a cat at the window. Someone's in that room." Ladders were deployed in seconds. The team stormed the room, smashing the window and pouring in just in time. They gently lifted Layla into their arms and carefully carried old Susu down the ladder to safety. Bondok had done it. The next morning, the sun rose on a scene of devastation. The house was a charred skeleton, but the family was safe. On the sidewalk across the street, Bondok sat quietly. His beautiful apricot fur was matted with soot and ash, and the tips of his whiskers were slightly singed from the heat. But for the first time in his life, his head was held high. The other neighborhood cats, who once teased him for being a scaredy cat, gathered around him in a circle of silent respect. No one mocked him now. Old Susu, wrapped in a warm blanket, slowly made her way over to him. She nuzzled his head gently. "You did it, Bondok," she purred, her voice filled with pride. "You were faster than fear itself." Bondok didn't say anything. He simply closed his eyes and leaned into the touch of Layla's small hand as she stroked his back, her touch full of gratitude and love. In that moment, he finally understood true courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about doing the right thing, even while you're trembling with fear. And he knew from that day on he would never be just the shy little kitten again. He was Bondok, the hero of the alley. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of courage and hope.